I've had this one big issue with Zenless Zone Zero lately. With many new and upcoming characters being more flexible and stronger than they've ever been, it always feels like older units from a bygone era of what Zenless was before are inevitably left behind. Yet what would happen if we were to just change one thing about a character? Even one small change could alter the viability of X or Y character. Today we're gonna go through my top list of 5 Zenless characters who, if they had one alteration, would instantly become easier to play, easier to build around, or just flat out stronger in performance. We're gonna go from my least exciting change to the most exciting change, starting with Koleda. Many folk in the community have mixed feelings about the president of Belobog. She is super mid to some, yet to others find great value as a burst budget stunner option. To me, Koleda is the latter and finds herself, especially in this day and age, with agents like Orphe or even the newly released Yidhari, pretty viable. Koleda having much less field time than her peers is a positive. The only negative, or should I say lack of positives, is the fact that many other S-rank stunners nowadays have baked-in buffs to help them make them more versatile. For Koleda, she technically does have a very strong buff in chain attacks, but if we look at the fine print, Koleda requires you to be in the stun window. So a character like Evelyn, who would love to utilize a chain or two outside of stun, can't technically benefit from these buffs. And as the game gets more creative when using the chain attacks outside of stun, take Jufufu and how she uses her chains with aftershock attacks, this slowly moves the narrative of chain attacks to being something a little bit more value if the devs can find more creative ways to make use of them in game. And Koleda would definitely be one of the contending stun characters for said teams if she were to change the verbiage to allow her to buff all chain attacks regardless of the condition. This would not be game breaking and allow for some fun shenanigans with Yao. I can feel it already. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Let's dive a little bit deeper into character number 2, and this one may already surprise you. It's one of our more modern characters, Seed Jr. Yes, that's right, a new character, and I'm already asking for changes. What gives, Josh? Isn't she already in a good spot with Defiler being one of the more annoying bosses to rotate into the endgame stages? Well, yes and yes. Seed, alongside a character in Orphe who's a pseudo off-field style play, pairs ever so synergistically. And not only that, each of said Opal Squad members can actually buff each other, making them 2 peas in a pod. But one is a super flexible sub-DPS character, and one is much more of a niche attack agent. Seed's gimmick is that she's able to mark another character in the party with her Vanguard status, and when she uses an EX to give the attack buff to the Vanguard, and said Vanguard using an EX to give another buff back to Seed, they both get the Besiege buff. These extra attacks and total damage bonuses are really strong. Yet there is one caveat: the Vanguard of Seed must be an attack class agent. When I initially read through Seed's kit, I thought she was going to be the more flexible and potent character out of her and Orphe, just because her buffs were stronger. Yet the restriction on attack agents leaves Seed in a precarious situation. Most attackers these days do utilize a buffer, yes, but more likely than not, we would be using characters like Yao, heck, even Yuzuha or Caesar King would give a larger attack bonus than Seed. So what's the point if Seed's buff is less potent? We know most attackers tend not to pair well with Seed just because they demand more on-field time, taking away the contributions of other attackers if we were to fit in Seed into a 2-attacker comp. So then what's the fix? Instead of removing the restriction of the Vanguard status altogether, why not just have it include attackers, anomalies, and rupture? That way, we can still have the focus on an offensive character, yet it could pair well with some interesting anomaly agents like Yanagi, Vivian, Bernice, and maybe even those of like Yishen, Minato, or Yidhari. Or looking towards the slight future, the Banyas and Yeshin Guans of the world, who are slated to come at the end of 2025 and incoming 2026. Having Seed become a more generalist sub-DPS option would open up the field to more options, versus her just being stuck to attackers who tend to take away her on-field time. And let's be honest, right now Seed actually does generally more damage than the average attacker. So at that point, you're just bringing along a level 1 Billy, Korin, Anton, or Nekomata to backpack and have access to said buffs. As we head over into the halfway point of this video, make sure to join us over on twitch.tv/Jshoea. Many of these conversations probably spawn from the live streams where we do Zenless Zone Zero content, so make sure to join us on the lives as we get our game on. But on to number 3, it's no surprise that this one also has to do with another passive restriction. Let's head over to the champion of the outer ring, that being Lighter. For not only having one of the most objectively hottest voice actors in the game, Lighter turns out to be also one of the stronger meta picks. His amazing stun potential, yet even more impactful buffs and debuffs for fire and ice characters make him one of the best niche stunners in the game. TBH, IDK why he buffs ice in the first place, seeing as how he only emits fire with his attacks, but I'm not complaining. What I do have to complain about is his awful passive restriction. See, what makes lighter is the massive 75% ice and fire damage bonus, yet this is not tied to his core, special, or ult like the more modern characters. It's tied to his additional passive, which requires him to have an attacker or same faction character by his side. Firstly, the attacker class is quite diverse, yet there are only a handful of characters that make use of fire and ice. Then even worse, let's take a look at the Sons of Koleda and well, none of them are really purely offensive talents that can make use of him. Sure, you can argue that blemishes fire, but she would rather have another on-field anomaly unit to help drive her off-field fire after burns. That being said, where does lighter fit in these days? Well, you could say that with Eve and Astra teams, which have been conventionally strong ever since the Star of Lyra duo came out, yet outside of that, no other modern character has really made use of him. I might even be forgetting somebody, but they probably weren't that important enough for me to really remember them. With that being said, why not move the buff to the core ability and move the smaller debuff and the additional 3-second stun duration over to the additional core? I'd rather have the larger buff on the main core ability and the smaller ones on the additional. But overall, this seems like a pretty good compromise and an easy fix for Zenless developers. Number 4 and 5 on the list are going to be a bit more creative, as there are other parts to many kits in the game that we could change. But I think with these two, we could very well see a real possibility. Let's firstly start with Caesar King. Yep, the king of defense has been in such a middling state as far as the game's developed, past the notion that we need defense to specifically defend us against certain things. Now that the game has implemented a parry into almost every single character's kit as of 2.0, there really isn't a need for characters to focus strictly on defense. Yet what if I were to propose an additive change to our shield and parry mechanics? Let's introduce the perfect parry, or the flawless parry. This would force players to perfectly time their parry to a specific 2 or 3 frames of her animation, and by doing so you would allow her to gain something, whether that be gaining an extra buff, dealing twice the amount of days. Heck, I even proposed to other creators that she should be able to reflect damage, and that would allow her to contribute more than just being an archaic shield bot. As we all know, the purpose of Caesar King's entry wasn't just for tower, but it was to help bridge new incoming players who were new to the game to feel less punished for playing, as with Zenless being an action RPG, you will get punished for most things if you do not parry, assist, or play the intended way. If we can add a bit more nuance to that, it would make her so much more enjoyable to play. I know this video is about one change, but bonus points if we can add to Caesar King's kit an additional sheer force damage buff, making her a somewhat viable option to be paired with some of the new Rupture units. Then before number 1, I wanted to give a shout out to my honorable mention of Grace, who honestly needs more than just one change. But if we get 1,000 likes on this video, I'll help the Zenless devs create a whole new rework. And you might be wondering, Josh, you've already gone through so many older units whom with the community had so many gripes with in the past. And now that Sambi and Ellen Joe have gone reworks, and most of the anomaly agents introduced in the 1.x patches are doing fine, who else do we need to change? Well, my fellow proxies, I actually know a fellow content creator who is going to enjoy this one. The last character I wanted to introduce a new change to is the normalest cop in all of PubSec, that being Zhu Yuan. Now for context, Zhu Yuan isn't necessarily a bad unit. However, she does have a bit of a bad rap because her playstyle is very much predicated on getting into the stun window and having other characters buff her during the right moments for her to make the most out of her small bursts of damage. Well, simply much like how with Hugo's gimmick Totalize and how it's changed the game by shortening the stun window and condensing his damage. Wait, he's the character I forgot. Oh, how silly of me. What if for Zhu Yuan we extend the stun window? With each successful 5 rounds of suppressive enhanced shot shells, she can gain 2 or 3 extra seconds of a stun window, this allowing her to potentially launch a 4th whole round of suppressive fire rounds if you are savvy enough, and would not have to necessarily increase her multipliers, but would invite players to learn how to optimize the stun window rotations, in a way of how Evelyn does so with her chain attacks. And I remember when Evelyn came out, how I fell in love with her gameplay. And the difference was that the payoff to getting 5 or 6 chains versus 3 or 4 was much more rewarding and definitely felt better than with Zhu Yuan, who's been relegated to the same amount of shot shells even if she's M1, which is absolutely absurd. Yes, I understand Eve has a lighter, but what if we could bake in that extra extension of the stun window into her passive? That would make her much more open of a character to explore the depths of her kit, as she, at current, only has so much time to work with before she's swapped back out to Jingyi to set her up again. So in summary, let's grant the ability for Zhu Yuan to extend her own stun window through her shot shell gameplay, as to invite players to master the rotation and ammo management in order to bring out the depth of character that she already has. And those are my top 5 units who at this current time need only one change to allow them to jump back into the rotation of things. If you think I missed somebody, let me know down in the comments. And if you liked this style of video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you like to see more of these ZZ commentary videos, and shoutouts to Editor Kun. This is actually one of the first videos that we're doing together with this series. With that, my name is Josh, and we'll see you guys in the next one.